Edit the magic of Blue Hour is our topic today on Luminar Coffee Break. This is part 2, and I have that same very special guest, and it begins now. Hello, everyone, and welcome. So our first episode was how to capture Blue Hour, the magic of Blue Hour. Now our special guest, the one and only Jacob Boss. Jacob, how you doing?
Hello, everyone.
Good. So Jacob here is going to show us how he edited. The image you took was awesome, and if you didn't have time to check out that video, please do. So you showed us how you captured this amazing image. Now you're going to show us how you edit the magic of Blue Hour.
Definitely.
All right?
Yeah.
You want to give any talks to everyone?
Well, we've done all the hard work already. So when you capture the image right and you have everything done, then the editing is much easier. Rather than trying to solve something what was captured in the first place, not the right way, now we have a great image and we can really get the most out of it using the Luminar Neo.
Perfect. All right, let's dive right in. So here we are with our desktop. Oh, look at that shot you got. Awesome.
Brilliant. So obviously, we're working on a raw file. Now, just quickly coming back to the catalog, confirming what we were talking earlier. We're working on a raw file. I was on 100 ISO. This one is a f4, but it doesn't really matter, 1.3 second. So as always, we bring it into edit module. And the first thing we need to do is to develop it. Now, to develop it, in Luminar Neo, we're going to be using develop raw. And if we would have lots of noise there, we would be using noiseless raw or noiseless AI extension. However, since we knew that we were shooting with 100 ISO, we know that we don't have to worry about the noise. So we're going to jump straight into develop raw and start with the development. Now, when I do the raw development, I like to start with adjusting my optics first. Just making sure really that the distortion coming from lens or the camera is all taken care of. So make sure that each of these options are on. The auto distortion correction, then the auto fix aberration, and auto fringe. Once I have that done, I know I don't have to worry about it anymore. The next thing I like to do is to jump into the transform, just to make sure that everything is aligned right. Now, I like to do as much as I can in the camera, making sure that everything is straight. But it's not always possible. Sometimes the combination of a wider lens make it a little bit more difficult. So here you can either use the auto option by clicking on this button, and sometimes it does a great job, sometimes not, depending on the image. But in this case, it works quite well. Everything looks straight anyway, so we're going to leave it there. However, you have the option of using the vertical, horizontal, and aspect slider to adjust it if you want to. So now we take care of the optics and we take care of the transformation. So after this, the next step I like to do is to take care of the sharpness and noise reduction. Now, you should do them at the same time because they both impact each other. When you add the sharpness, you're adding a little bit of noise. When you apply noise reduction, you're removing the sharpness. So what you're looking for is a balance between them. And for the shots like this, I really like to use the rule of 100. Let me explain you how it's going to work. We're going to open the sharpness tab and a noise reduction. After that, we're going to zoom into 100%. You can do that many different ways. I like to use the shortcut at the bottom of the screen. Just click on 100 and then navigate to the area where you would expect noise. So generally, darker spots are the locations where you would find the noise. Again, looking at it, you can see the details, but really no noise there. So just to make sure, we're going to add 10 on luminosity slider. Just make sure that there is noise, but that's pretty much it, what we're going to do on a noise reduction. Now, this is where the rule of 100 step in. So we have the number 100 minus the amount we have added with the luminosity slider. So 100 minus 10 equals to 90. And that's the amount we're going to add into our sharpening. So take the slider, bring it to 90. And generally, on the landscape shots, not on a portrait, because with 90 on portrait, you would add lots of sharpness to the face. It maybe wouldn't work. But on a shot like this, it's a great ratio between the noise reduction and sharpness. So let's say we would have lots of noise. So we would add maybe 25 or 30 on the luminosity slider. Then 100 minus 30, we would add 70 on sharpening. But we have the setting down here. Before we leave, we need to make sure that we apply masking when it comes to sharpening. Because right now, we are sharpening everything. We are sharpening. Let me just zoom out quickly. We are sharpening the sky, we are sharpening the edges, and we don't want that. We just want to sharpen the areas with the edges, textures, and points which need to be sharpened. And to do that, we're going to use the masking slider. And in general, between 60 and 70 is the right setting. That works really well, just really sharpening the areas you need to. So now we've taken care of that, and we're going to move to the top part of the develop tool. We're going to leave the profile on. Don't worry about it for the time being. And we're going to jump into the light and black and white. With the exposure, we come back to that, just like the contrast, and we're going to move into the highlights and shadows. So starting with the highlights, that's where we're adjusting the brighter part of our image, and we're going to bring it down. We want to make them just a little bit darker. Now, we don't want to go overboard because that just makes and adds too much contrast. We're just going to go gently.
Oh, nice.
Simply keep an eye on the image, and specifically on this image, we want to keep an eye on the sky because that's the place which is kind of brighter. So I think somewhere around minus 70 works very well here. After that, we move into the shadows. So we're going to open the shadows, the darker parts, just to make sure that we see details everywhere. But again, don't go overboard because that will just looks unnatural. What you want to do, let's say on this image, stick to somewhere around 20. Now, once you adjust your highlights and shadows, it's time to move into the blacks and whites. When I edit my blacks and whites, I always like to put on the clipping mask. And you can do that by simply hitting the J on your keyboard. Once you do that, you will see blue and red overlays. You can see red overlays on our image here. What it means that this area is overexposed, it's completely white, and there are no data left there. If we would see a blue overlay, so let me add lots of black here. You can see it here. Again, those are areas that are completely dark, and again, there is no data there. So let's bring this back and reset it just by double clicking, or maybe not here, like this. And looking at it, we know that we have quite lots of brightness into the lamps. So we can adjust that quickly with the highlights slider. We can bring it down a little bit. And then by looking at the image, we know that we don't add too much of the whites because if we do that, we just increase the brightness. So let's say we go just somewhere around 10. After that, we're going to adjust our blacks and we're going to bring them down. Again, gently keeping an eye on the image itself. So now we have our highlights, shadows, blacks and whites all adjusted. After this, before we leave, we can jump into the exposure and smart contrast. When it comes to exposure, I think the image is looking good. So I would just add a little bit of contrast. Of course, that we can always come back and adjust this later, so it doesn't have to be finished with that. Finally, the last part is adjusting the color of the image. And that starts with adjusting the white balance, where you can adjust the temperature and tint, and then also the saturation and vibrance. So when it comes to image like this, I really like to add a little bit of warmth and extra magenta on the tint slider. However, white balance is a thing which is really difficult to explain to someone because it's very specific person to person, you know. So out of all this, what we're going to do, this is a part which is just really difficult to explain, and you have to a little bit follow your gut and what you see on your screen. But again, I like to add a little bit of warmth and a little bit of magenta because I feel that these colors works really nicely on an image like this. After that, when it comes to saturation and vibrance, what I like to do is to actually bring the saturation into the minus little bit, generally to minus 10, just to make it a little bit flat across, and then just pick the colors with the one vibrant slider, which basically just, I really like to use vibrant slider because it's like a smart saturation, you know. It doesn't push all the colors, it just picks the right colors and it works. So I think that we are done with the basic development. We can hit J on our keyboard again to switch off the clipping mask. And now we can start to have a fun with the creative tools in Luminar Neo.
Yeah, that's awesome. So now with the creative tools in Neo, what did you like doing with this?
So because this almost looks like a fantasy look, you know, it looks very romantic with a street lamp and a castle and the old street, we're going to go for that mystical tools. And by saying that, you already get the idea. We're going to be using the mystical tool. We're going to be using glow. We're going to jump into the magic light AI extension as well, which will work great on this image. And we're going to really create very romantic scene. So let's jump straight back to the image and let's start with the magic light AI. So let's open that. And this image is almost like this extension was built for it.
Yeah.
Because it's really simple. We just increase the intensity. So we start to get the effect in the street lights. Now, personally, I'm not a big fan of the star effect. Generally, I'd like to avoid it, but it's just my personal thing.
Yeah, the
So
burst.
it just, I think it's a little bit overwhelming for the viewer, and it takes lots of attention away from the rest of the image. So what I like to do actually is to bring the beam width down and also bring the number of beams down. And that way, if it's adjusted right, all I'm adding is a glow into these lamps. So rather than adding the star shape, which wasn't there in the first place anyway, I'm just enhancing the glow. Now I can add a little bit of glow. I can adjust the size of it if I want to. I can make the light a little bit brighter, but really I'm just happy with this setting. Just always don't forget to double check the before and after for each of the tool, just to see where you're at. But for me, for the time being, I think this is right. So a little bit of intensity, I take away the star effect and add a glow. After this, we're going to really enhance the mystical look. So we're going to jump into the creative section and open the mystical tool.
Awesome. All right. So now, and what is mystical tool going to do for us? It's going to give us that soft, dreamy look without making it look fake or dull.
Right. I really like to use the mystical tool as you're right. It kind of adds multiple things at the same time. And this is really the power of the tool in Luminar Neo. You can do that in other software in a combination with multiple tools, but it takes time. And I think you can, with like mystical tool and tools like this, you can create impact immediately. And let me just show you, if I increase the amount, and you don't want to go overboard with it, it just need to be subtle, but it just make everything works together.
Oh, look at that. Yeah.
Yeah. It adds glow into the lamps. It just adds a little bit of glow to the overall image, a little bit of that kind of cinematic look, and I think it just works really well together.
Definitely. I love your combination with it.
Great. So that's the mystical tool. I don't generally do anything else. If you want, you can add a little bit of warmth there just to follow the warmth feel of the image. But for me, that's about it here. Now, after this, the one more tool I would like to use is the mood tool. I like to use mood tool or elutis in it because I really feel that once you're done with the edit, to finish it off, I like to add one layer that blends everything together. I think it's a really cool way to finish the edit, and it will work really well here. The Luminar Neo comes with a great set of elutis already. For my images, I really like to go into the cinematic toning. And my favorite is the Long Beach. I really think that the Long Beach works really well for images like this. It brings the warmth, it brings the magenta out, and it creates a really nice cinematic feel.
I agree.
So once we apply it, of course, that we can adjust the amount by looking at it again before and after. I think it's great. You can even see before and after how it kind of creates even a little bit more of that cinematic contrast. So I think it really, really works well together. And once we're done with the mood tool, we are almost finished. The last thing I would do is to add a vignette just to really help the viewers to guide them through the image and make some of the less interesting parts, just kind of put them away a little bit to guide the viewer's eyes. So we're going to bring the amount down. And I usually like to overdo it first and then keep backing until I almost can't notice the vignette. Now I'm on minus 22, so it's there. It's just that I can't see it anymore. One tip for using the vignette tool, it's quite cool to, when you apply it, to step away from the screen, about a meter, meter and a half, because then you can see the vignette a little bit better. If you're really close to the screen, you don't notice it as much. But if you take a step back, you notice it more. And one really cool thing on Luminar Neo is that you can actually choose the center of the image. You know, when you're using other software, generally it's just a center of the image and you can't do much with it. Here you can just click on the choose subject, your mouse will turn to this cross, and then you just adjust the center. And additionally, if you want, you can also open the advanced setting and add a little bit of inner light. Again, in a way that you can notice it, but I think it really helps. I really like to use these kind of adjustments where you can really navigate the viewer's eyes. So when they look at the image, immediately their eyes get attracted to what you want them to be attracted.
Yeah, could you hit the visibility right there? Look at that. So just one more and let go.
Yeah.
Just that slight effect adds to the image. So you're not going overboard like you see that many times. right? Where people have a tendency of going overboard, and you look at it and say, wow, that's a really cool vignette. Well, now you know they went overboard.
That's it.
You know, so the best bet is little by little, like you just did, gradual change. Something that draws your eyes to inner light is absolutely amazing with it.
I agree. 100% agree. And of course that we could keep going on and on with many other tools. Tools that comes to my mind is golden hour slider in a landscape tool. We could apply a little bit of dramatic tool and apply it locally, maybe like on the castle. We could add a little bit of mud tool and film grain to make it even more cinematic. But I think for the moment, because we already had a great picture, this is more than enough when it comes to
I agree.
editing it.
And then at this point here is where you could export it and share it to social media and so on. Could you show us before and after with the slider?
Of course. So we just that. So this is your before, and this is your after. And sometimes it's also quite cool to see it really before, so you can see where we started it, which was already quite a nice picture anyway. And then you just really get the most out
finishing touches with it. And people, that's a big thing for people to understand. You always look at them, how come the pros photos look? There's a little something. And it wasn't a whole lot that you just did to it. You know, follow the concepts and the principles, and you'll get that down. Awesome. Hey, where can we find out more about you?
So if you're more interested in my personal portfolio, you can head to my website, borsphoto.com. I have a portfolio there. You can also find out more about my workshops, which I do. We just did one photo walk in London with Luminar, which was amazing. We had 50 people coming and have a great fun in the center of London. We're planning to do more of those. So borsphoto.com is definitely the place to find out more about me, or keep an eye on my socials. I'm using Bors Photography all across, so I would love to
Awesome.
be in touch.
Well, that's great. Thanks so much for joining us. Now, if you're here watching this, Carl and Dale, the ones helping me put it all together while I'm here in Scotland, please stick around for the Ask Me Anything segment. For everyone else, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you at the next coffee break.